All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Hmm. Do I have to hit got it? Or is this
Yeah.
that's- Mhm.
okay? I didn't want to tell. I'm terrible for buttons. I keep pushing. I still don't have my computer working right. Oh, geez. See here.
Well, ladies, palms up and welcome to another week of the Palms Up. Imagine trying to make sure we get this link onto our Facebook feed. Can you ladies hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, great. Welcome to another week of the Palms Up show.
You're having trouble too?
I tell you, I'm trying to get my computer up too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now that we got that out of our system, let's go ahead and get going with our show this week. This week's guest is none other than Miss Arlene Mullen. Miss Arlene Mullen is the director of the dialysis
Advocates.
Did we lose? Yeah, please excuse me, having a little technical difficulty. You know, every week it's technology. It gets a
Yeah.
new strand.
And there's no 5-year-olds in my neighborhood.
Yeah, because they know how to work it with no problem.
They do.
I think it's young minds, their minds is just, just boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. Mine's definitely slowing down.
Well, we're gonna see if we can go ahead and get started with the show. I tell you, every week with this technology, we are just constantly challenged. Are you ladies still here there and can you hear me?
I
Yes, we
can't.
can. We don't see
Okay.
you, but we hear you.
Yes, I can hear you. Hmm.
All right, all righty. Palms up to you ladies. Looks like we are live. I am so grateful to be back for another week of the Palms Up show. We've got our guest, Miss Arlene Mullen, who is the director of Dialysis Advocates Associates. LLC, and they are helping to raise the word and to help out folks out there in the community to understand what's going on in the world of dialysis. I apologize. Each week we go live, and some weeks we get started a little rough than others. So we appreciate your patience. It's your girl. It's your girl. It's the Palms Up Show. We are shooting on location, and we are welcoming again our guest, the director, Miss Arlene Mullins. Miss Arlene Mullins is the director of Dialysis Advocates LLC, and she is here tonight to talk to us about some alarming information. Did you know that in the United States that kidney disease is the leading cause of death? Did you know that at least 37 million adults are estimated to have kidney disease? And did you further know that Blacks, African Americans, are 3 times more likely to develop kidney failure, or what we call ESRD, which is standing for end-stage renal disease? If you're out there and you are someone who has dealt with dialysis, is dealing with dialysis, or has a family member or loved one that is dealing with dialysis, tonight's show is in dedication of all of our families out there that are challenged to get treatment in the dialysis industry. We're hoping to open your eyes so that you will stand up and speak up, because something must be done. Guys, the dialysis care in the United States is dominated by 2 main industry leaders, that being Fresenius and DaVita. Fresenius and DaVita are 2 multi-billion-dollar companies that have been accused by prosecutors, accused by whistleblowers, accused by advocates of what we call Medicare fraud, kickbacks, patient harm, patient death, bribery under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, and so many other questionable wrongdoings. Miss Arlene Mullins has been an advocate for the last 25 years, helping families to combat and to fight the challenges that they're dealing with in their dialysis care. In many cases, many of these citizens have faced death. Guys, all too often, there are things that are impacting us in our communities and across this nation. And as African Americans, it's important that we come back to the table and that we speak up and share our perspectives, because usually, we are the population that's being impacted the most from a negative standpoint. Welcome to the show, Miss Arlene Mullins, and thanks so much for taking the time to be with us this evening.
Well, thanks for having me.
So
And-
for 25 years, you've been advocating for dialysis, and what many of our guests don't realize is that it's just been you. Can you help us understand a little bit about your walk and maybe take us back 25 years ago when you decided that you would speak up?
I was working in a laboratory before, and test tubes aren't really that exciting. So I turned around and cross-trained into dialysis. I worked for a small hospital. I shouldn't say a small hospital, but a small unit that was across the street from the hospital. So we gave excellent care. We had 3 patients. We could give them coffee, water. And that was the only time we felt that they were able to drink as much fluid as they could, because dialysis takes the fluid off. And you have to be really careful on what you eat prior to that. I mean, what you drink. So the for-profits came in and purchased our patients because they're immune from the Stark Law. And it was passed in 1972 in the Senate committee, the congressional act that every patient, every citizen has the right to dialysis and government will pay. And if you have insurance, it'll pay for 3 years. And the other one would be secondary. What happened was I started noticing cheap needles coming in, 1-ply gauze pads instead of 2. We didn't have time to take care of a patient as far as if they're bleeding. We had 15 minutes to get a patient on, wipe down the machine, get the machine going, circulating, and we had 15 minutes to get them off. Now, there is no standard of care. Each company, each clinic makes their policy. So there's no standard as far as anything. Now, with the Stark Law immunity, this allowed them to sell the patients. It's guaranteed money from the federal government. And there's no policy, so you could have as many patients as you want. And you might miss 2 to 3 blood pressures because you couldn't meet the needs of every patient. I started seeing that. I started seeing whatever cost money, special BAS, which is the bicarb, like if you have going on your potassium, calcium level. And the BAS were taken away. They make money with injectables by giving Calcigex instead of putting it in a acid bath that runs on a dialysis machine. So the patients started having to adapt. And with calcium, I noticed one patient in particular that he looked like a deer with headlights. He was frightened. Just getting his body to get adjusted to this no special bath. The lab work is taken. It is sent out of state. And sometimes the process I was noticing, they were drawing it in the wrong tubes. And when I mean the wrong tubes, they were supposed to have their clot tubes, but if you don't spin them down, the cells, the blood is sitting on and causing a difference in the potassium and the glucose. So you weren't getting accurate results to begin with. So I just saw immediately that this was a MASH unit. I also noticed training was technicians would come in, no medical background, and it was earn as you learn, and your learning was on the patients. They do not have to be certified for 18 months. You can't even do a hairdresser without it having it 9 months and so many hours, and plus show your skill. So it just turned into, I lost too many patients, and I just finally, I had a fire chief, one of our fire chiefs, that his grasp, which is where you put the needle in, was having aneurysms because the needle went through the graft and then they turn up the pump speed, which circulates the blood. And we were ruining the patient's grasp by untrained help, untrained for 18 months. So that was a huge problem because it was really funny. I trained with an ER nurse. I trained with a ICU nurse, and I came from the lab. We were heavily medically trained. We all were in tears. It was like a 2-year course in 6 weeks. This is how you do it, and that's what you learned. Now, to learn the heart sounds, they had at that time, a tape, blah, 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 is a healthy heart. Now, we shouldn't even as a technician be listening to hearts, listening to the lungs to see if there's fluid on it. It was set up for profit only. And I finally, after Jim Brown, he had it in his groin. They took away the numbing. They took away just about everything. And his groin was the last place that this man had. And that's a very tender area. And he goes, Arlene, just go for it. I'm okay. He passed I think the next week or something.
Mhm.
And the patients were treated not as well because you were too busy. You just became, if they needed coffee, you couldn't do it because you didn't have time. So it was the main assembly line. We didn't get to know our patients as well. And we kind of became the enemy, these patients. So now in clinics, I started noticing, I went up to the Senate hearing. I got Senate hearings in 2000.
Well, let me stop you for a minute because that's a big jump. I want to stop for a minute because you've covered a lot of ground, and I thank you for being so detailed. Hello, guys. It's your girl, Palms Up. We are talking with Miss Arlene Mullen, and Miss Arlene Mullen is the president of Dialysis Advocates, LLC. Arlene has been an advocate in the dialysis industry for the past 25 years and counting. If you're just joining us, what you're hearing Arlene talk about is how it is that she came to be an advocate. She's talking about some of those earlier experiences, and what she's detailed thus far is the reality that many of the technicians that were working with the patients were not necessarily trained. She's talking about it being set up for a for-profit understanding, which means that our citizens and their well-being was not always the first thing to be understood or upheld. And so I want you to listen in as Arlene is now talking to us about something as formal as the Senate hearings that happened in 2000. Now, before we even go any further, I want to put in context the reality that Arlene, you've been a dialysis advocate, we say 25 years, but is that as accurate as 1998? Is that accurate?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and you started out as, I heard you say you were trained in a lab. What was your formal title?
I was a laboratory technician.
Laboratory technician.
Right.
And so in your position, you were able to observe a lot that was going on that started to cause some question. So from 1998 to now, she's mentioning the 2000 Senate hearings that came about as a result of a lot of the wrongdoing that she was observing. So would you bring us up to speed and help us understand what were the Senate hearings for primarily, and then what did they entail?
The Senate hearings were about the lack of care for patients. Our Senate hearing was called Dialysis Patients at Undue Risk. The Office of the Inspector General, with the documents I had, and the GAO, which is Government Accountability Office, stated that there's problems in dialysis. The oversight that is supposed to monitor them is them. And they were caught in the Senate hearing of not even taking statistics. It was on the honor system. So I found that 32, I went up to CMS after our hearing. They did nothing, even knowing our patients were at risk. And I think I got very discouraged because I became the enemy. No one else.
Why did you become the enemy? Would you tell us why?
Because nobody else ever saw a problem. In medicine, you kind of an unwritten thing, you keep your mouth shut. So, I mean, you all of a sudden your friends are chastising you. So anyhow, when I went up to the Senate hearing, they did nothing. And the patients, when I had the Senate hearing, they asked me where the patients were. Well, these patients in many of these clinics are scared to death to speak out.
Why would they be scared, Arlene?
They're scared because they will be terminated. They're scared because they're retaliated against and nothing is ever done. So no matter where a patient would complain, let's say the White House, the US Senator, no matter civil rights, ADA, it would always go back to the network, IPROs, they call them.
And when you say network, you mean basically the dialysis network?
Right. So basically, after a while, they wouldn't talk to me. CMS did not did everything they could to obstruct advocating.
And
Now-
hold on, when you say CMS, are you talking about the Medicare folks?
Yes, right. The CMS payers
Okay,
pay for dialysis and they pay for nursing homes. The inspections I found were once every 10 years at that time, or at all. Now-
once every 10 years.
Oh, they still kind of fudge that. They still have to ask in many states the oversight that they're going to inspect a unit so we know to clean up the unit.
Mm.
So we are warned when the network comes in. I mean, the health department comes in. Now, the health department cannot sanction. They're given 30 days to clean up whatever they found.
Mhm.
And they have to do a plan on how they're going to clean this up. Let's say people are bleeding underneath the chairs because they're not watching them and they bleed out. So the health department comes in and said, what are you going to do to prevent any more bleed outs, which usually causes a death? And they say, well, we're just going to tape it up more or whatever. Then they come in to see if it's done. At that time, they don't do it anymore in some states. And then if they see some other wrongdoing, they have another 30 days. So in other words, there is no safety net for the patients. These are in strip malls. They are private businesses. So it is set up not about healthcare. Now, I want to go into the Stark Law a little bit more, to the fact that each patient has a price on their head. I think it's up to $100,000.
But let me break it down for a minute before you go any further. This is heavy, and I know you know it's heavy. You've been carrying it for 25 years, and you've been advocating genuinely, not someone who ran to go make a dollar. You basically wanted to bring this before the people because you couldn't imagine how this could still be going on. Guys, it's your girl, Palms Up. And if you are just tuning in, our guest today is Miss Arlene Mullen. Arlene Mullen is an advocate in the dialysis arena and has been since 1998. She's participated in the Senate hearing of 2000 that was questioning and looking and probing into the mistreatment of dialysis care patients. If you yourself have been someone who is dealing with dialysis, or you've got a loved one dealing with dialysis, this is important information, because in our country, all too often, if someone doesn't speak up to say anything, then we don't know that these atrocities are taking place. And unfortunately, we've lost a lot of family members and loved ones and community members to dialysis. We want you guys to know that up until now, we hadn't really heard about the extent of what's going on in the dialysis care industry. So Arlene is going to tell us a little bit more about something called the Stark Law. And she's talking about the fact that companies such as Fresenius and DaVita, you know about them, you see them all over our town, especially in low-income Black populated communities. She's talking about the lack of regulation. She's talking about the lackadaisical approach that Medicare has taken to provide proper oversight, to make sure that facilities are clean, and make sure that processes are proper, and to make sure that the folks are properly trained. So you hear Ms. Mullen talking about all of what she observed as a lab technician all the way back in 1998, and how she's been spearheading this fight to bring awareness to the malpractices, to the reality that many patients in the dialysis industry are not properly being taken care of. And if they speak out about some of the treatments that they're receiving, then they're retaliated against, and in many cases terminated from their care. And what that proves to be is deadly. for many of our patients who need this care 3 times a week. So many of them stay silent. And it's important for you to understand that so you can realize the context of how important it is and how brave it is for Ms. Mullen to come forward, because this is dangerous. This is impacting people's ability to keep making money off of the Black man and off of many citizens. So Arlene, thank you so much. You were going to break down and tell us about the Stark Law and why there's a price tag on each life.
Well, the Stark Law allows them, and they're the only physicians that are allowed to profit off their patients. The for-profit companies came in and bought the patients from the medical directors, the actual nephrologist. So they're in business now together.
Hold on, wait a minute. So you're telling me that there's some kind of business arrangement happening
Yes,
between the dialysis care center and who else?
the medical directors and nephrologists that are treating the patients.
Wow, and why would that be a benefit to any of them involved? What are we talking about exactly?
Well, because you have investors. And I think what bothered me was, why are the investors investing in human life? And why are this, and how are the patients being treated as far as care? And they are treated as far as care. Now it's like they used to, and I know I'm probably going too deep, but you have 3 different baths according to a person's potassium. You don't want to give them too much. That's not very good. Now they took 1 and 3 away. I just used 2. And the lab work is sent out of state, so it's not fresh lab work. I also noticed that if one company, if the doctor says, I want my patient to have a bigger dialyzer, it's one size fits all. They have to go, and the doctor has to go in front of a panel to justify why that doctor wants a bigger dialyzer for his patient. This one patient I had was denied for 2 years. She was losing her hair, and she also was breaking out in an ugly rash. She's a young girl. So we finally got her another dialyzer, but they started, I guess I will just say this. If a patient complains, you have untrained help. That's a disaster right there. But who owns the prescription pad? The doctor or the business partner?
Whoa, wait a minute, what? The business partner has access to the prescription pad?
Absolutely, because we had a case in Houston where a doctor had sold to DaVita his patients. They don't call it a business arrangement, but the government pays everything since the 1972 Congressional Act. So this doctor put his patients up, and then they sent him a list of what he could and what he was going to order for his patients. He told them, I didn't sell my prescription pad to you. He goes, I want out. DaVita sued him. He won because the patients belonged to them. But the question is, your doctor, you can ask any patient, when's the last time you've seen your doctor? Where's his office? And you can, I did have, when I went up to Medicare, they promised me that the doctors were getting $700 to $1,000 a month for each patient on top of it that Medicare was paying for the doctor to see their patients. Do you know how they see their patients?
How?
Hi, Miss Hampton. How are you doing? Everything okay? Yes, everything's fine. They sign off. A doctor can go through the whole center, and it may not even be their doctor. It could be one of the business partners. So they get an extra 1,000. The doctor sometimes is out within 5 minutes, but they get paid that extra money. That is not healthcare. Why are we not looking at diabetics' feet to see if we can find cellulitis? Why aren't we? It should be healthcare. There's no crash cards. You call 911. I mean, I could go into thousands and thousands of cases that I've done over the years.
Yeah,
they-
and I wanna keep you right there. Hey guys, it's your girl. Palms up to you. If you are just tuning in or if you've been following along, we're talking to Miss Arlene Mullen. You ask yourself, what does it mean to be an advocate? Or maybe you haven't asked yourself and you should be. If you have family members that are susceptible to receiving dialysis care, if you yourself have been receiving dialysis care, maybe this language is familiar for you. But if you know, the Healthy DCME Leadership Coalition on Juneteenth Day, this past June 19th, we held a press conference down at the Freedom Plaza, and we also did a prayer breakfast to acknowledge that we were joining the fight to raise awareness for yet another healthcare fiasco, we'd like to call it, that's impacting people of color. DaVita and Fresenius are multi-billion-dollar corporations for profit that tend to be set up in communities of low income, because apparently this is yet another profit-making scheme for folks that are investing in human health care. As you hear our advocate, Miss Arlene Mullen, explaining, all too often we're not paying attention, or we're not made aware, or we're just afraid to speak out. But what Arlene is detailing is that there are many, many oversights that are not being imposed on our citizens, or being taken care of, I should say, for our citizens' sake. And there are people making money as a result. You heard her talking that doctors on average in the dialysis arena are receiving at least $700 to $1,000 for meeting with their patients. And in many cases, it could be the investor. In many cases, the investors could have access to the prescription pad. So there's a money making going on in this dialysis industry. And Arlene is detailing much of the activities that are taking place in the industry, and why it is that Medicare appears to be so dormant in their ability to provide proper oversight. Arlene, you were detailing for us the Stark Law.
Right.
And the Stark Law is basically, as an advocate at this point in the fight, what is it that you'd like to see happen, or how is it that you believe we could clean this industry up?
If they take away the Stark Law, that immunity, they're the only ones that have it, the only physicians, there would be no investors. There would be no owning your own laboratories. It wouldn't be a vicious circle of violence, or have your own pharmacies. But I think what's more important that I need to at least speak out is the termination of patients. If someone doesn't like you, I have doctors who have actually in writing said that they're told to write up patients to get rid of them. Now, if you are targeted, they start with a behavioral contract. If you don't agree, you sign it. If you want to leave, you sign it. Then comes the termination letter. And this to me is the thing that really got me going. The termination letter is you need to find your own dialysis center. Remember, you're blacklisted. And the thing is you lose your ESRD benefits, which means you're no longer a dialysis patient. Now, when you lose the ability of being a dialysis patient, you go to the hospital when you're near death, near death. And if you're not near death enough, then you come back the next day. Those patients have no due process. They don't ever ask the oversight. They don't seem to care to ask what this patient's done, because they know with all this going on that you write up a patient that Attila the Hun has a better reputation. They will harass and intimidate a patient until they can't take it anymore. When you can't take it anymore, you only dialyze when you're near death. You have no benefits, but guess who you usually go back to? The same people that terminated you. I just heard the other day that now that you guys are becoming vocal in this, is now they're giving second chance contracts. Now, remember the first contract, you were guilty. You could, they signed off, the oversight signed off, Medicare signed off without ever talking to the patient. Now,
and when you say signed off, and I want to clarify for folks, you're basically saying that a clinic has decided that they're going to terminate a patient, and usually that process is happening without the patient knowing, and Medicare would be approving it without even speaking to the patient about it?
Or the oversight.
And what would be a reason for being terminated?
They don't need a reason.
Mm.
They don't need a reason. If they, it's like a weed and feed committee. You're costing money. You go. You complain, you go. And yes, I have thousands of patients, and I have documents to prove what I'm saying tonight.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And thank you so much for reiterating that. Guys, it's your girl, and Palms Up. We are talking to Miss Arlene Mullen with the Dialysis Advocates LLC. She is the president and the founder. She's been advocating for 25 years in the dialysis industry. Reverend Ronald Wright is the CEO of Justice Seekers Texas, and he is also associate director with Ms. Mullen in the Dialysis Advocates LLC organization. He has joined the fight. Reverend Wright is actually a renowned civil rights leader, and for the past few decades, over 20 years, has been fighting for the rights of many in our communities, whether it be in our prisons, our police brutality understandings, you name it. He's been fighting for the civil rights and to raise the standards for our citizens that are going through. Reverend Wright has joined Arlene in this fight, and I'm going to ask him if he can unmute for us and come forward and speak to us with regards to what he has understood since he's joined the fight. Let's see if we can get him unmuted. I know that sometimes it can be a challenge. Reverend Wright, welcome to the call, and I'm going to ask you to unmute and introduce yourself.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Reverend Ronald Wright, Executive Director of Justice Seekers Texas, and also the co-executive director of Dialysis Advocate Association. And it's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. I was listening, but I wasn't zoomed in. I heard y'all since you first started, so I've been with you since the beginning. And Arlene's been doing good.
Awesome. Well, Arlene has been giving us the technical, because yes, you've been with something 25 years. You just, it's your baby, and you can speak it without even thinking about it forwards and backwards, because it's something that she's so familiar with. But what did it represent for you when you learned of this, and what have you been able to do since being involved?
Well, there have been issues. Prior to me meeting Arlene, I had heard various stories about how people were being treated. So I guess God has a way of doing things. And he brought me and Arlene together because I needed to be educated on it. And Arlene, by the grace of God, has done that. And what she told you is amazing, because can you imagine a certain race of people going through what she explained to you? And once they put you on a blacklist, you're history.
Right.
And the oversight. And what we want to accomplish is we want to be able to get our own dialysis facilities, as well as get a universal oversight board that's not being paid and not a part of what DaVita has put together, because they don't do anything. And of course, once we do this, we'll be able to get on Medicaid and Medicare and let you know, how can you cut somebody off and you haven't talked to them? I noticed you asked that question. How can you do that and you haven't talked to them to determine what took place or what went on? But because of who owns this and who started this, the billionaire, everything is kept silent. But silence helps the oppressor and not the oppressed. And so hopefully by the grace of God, through MI, Justice Seekers, the Dallas Advocate Association, we'll be able to make a difference in what is happening to our people in this world.
That is true. That is true. Guys, palms up, palms up. You're hearing from the Reverend Ronald Wright with Justice Seekers Texas. Also, Arlene Mullen. They are both advocates and director and associate director in the Dialysis Advocates LLC. They are pushing a movement to get this word out far and wide. You can go to www.mitv.fyi. I'll say it again, www.mitv.fyi, to get more information about this, to also understand what it is that Reverend Wright and Arlene are seeking to do with this, to see that the industry can become regulated. They're seeking to hold Medicare and Medicaid accountable for the practices that are affecting our citizens, and in many cases that are causing them death. As you heard Arlene say, that it's not uncommon for people to be able to invest in human life. And wherever that's the case, we must pay attention. Hey, you two, thank you so much. I want to invite my dear overseer to come forward and to be able to just shed light on what her personal testimony might be, and then also professionally as to what her input is. Hello, sis, and how's it going this week?
Hello, everybody. Nice seeing you again. It touched home. My mother and father both had kidney disease. And insurance do play a very big part. My mother ended up dying with congestive heart failure. They had put the port in, but because her numbers, according to the insurance, never got there, she never even was given an opportunity to get dialysis. My father went on dialysis. He was on it for about 8 months, and they pulled too much fluid off of him. And the last time I said, okay, Dad, you don't want it no more. So I end up bringing him home. It's real. I had an opportunity a couple of times to actually go in the back where people, it was almost like an assembly line. It looked like to me. It was so many people just hooked up to a machine, and there was nobody around looking, checking the machines or anything. It was just like I say, an assembly line. And I'm just blown to find out that most of them are not even certified to do it. So when the patients run into complications, that's why they're dying, because there's nobody that's certified that can help until the EMTs get there to get them to the hospital. So it's very personal to me, very, very personal. I've had a couple of people in the congregation since we did the Juneteenth to come forth and tell me about some of their experiences that they're having. And it is with DaVita. And every time I turn around, there's a new one coming up. Or that one, what is it? The Freeius, FREEIUS. They're popping up all over the place. And I'm just sorry, this country was built on money. And that's what it's all about. It's about money. Some of our greatest doctors, been able to talk to them, have jumped out the system because of money issues. They don't have pay them when they take on the patients and stuff. So they stopped taking Medicare patients. So again, who does that affect?
Exactly. Thank you, sis.
Right.
Arlene, you recently put out a newsletter, your Dialysis Advocate News, and in it, you talk about some of the main points that you feel would help to clean up the industry. You talk about patient right to review their charts and to choose their own advocate. You also talk about patient complaints, and you touched on that a little bit tonight, saying that basically, regardless of where they initiate the complaint, whether it's on the White House level, civil rights divisions, with the state governor, somehow that complaint ends back up with the industry folks. You talked about there not being regulated oversights of the dialysis industry practices.
Right.
You talked about the Stark Law, and you also talked about staff trainings not being
Right.
adequate. You're coming to Congress July 28th for your whistleblower summit. Will you talk to us about your intentions 25 years later? What is your view? What's your vision of what you'd like to see happen?
My vision was that they should have stopped it long ago. People up at Medicare knew what was happening. I was blocked by DaVita from advocating, and even though that was illegal, they did it. What I do want to see, and what I'm going to talk about, is just lay it on the line. Who knew? Who's done nothing? And we need to take away the immunity for the Stark Law. That would clean it up a little bit. We also, like Reverend Wright says, we need a neutral oversight. Patients should be allowed to view their records. Over the years, and the patients never get anything derogatory written about them, is the first step, and the patient isn't even aware that they have been written up on false accusations. So when they're ready to pull the plug on you, they do, and you lose a life. I have one person that lost all his toes until we got him into a unit. So the thing is why are we putting patients, taxpayers' money for the abuses that I have seen and heard for 25 years? And we charge nothing. You can't charge somebody anything. This is wrong, but the more cases we have, and we've got enough evidence to bury this industry. And it's all the way up to the Senate. Nobody seems to care, but they will care now.
Well, I thank you for that. And Reverend Wright, will you come forward? You have talked, I've interviewed with you and had the opportunity to talk to you a little bit more behind the scene. You raised the question of whether or not this dialysis process is related to it being genocidal. Will you talk a little bit more about your thoughts on that?
That's correct. And at the end of the day, this was all created in 1975. It was created in 75. All of a sudden, everybody has dialysis. And where did that come from? Medically, I like to ask several of the doctors why they didn't have it in 65 or 55 or 45. People are still living the same way now as we did then. But at any rate, when that was created, it was another form, I believe, of a genocidal attack. We haven't had a war in this country in years, and so we're heavily populated. We've got people coming from all around the world into this country, and those that think they're in power trying to decide what can we do to eliminate people, and they created dialysis to do that. And now, of course, you know, you got the coronavirus. Then you got the mosquito bites. We come up with all of these different illness, and only a certain race of people get them. And so, and my thing is, why is all the dialysis centers in the black neighborhoods? And they are all over the United States. I know they are in Dallas, down in Texas, but they're not in the white neighborhoods. So whites don't get dialysis. Why is it? And I used to say minorities, but with Hispanics, we're not the minority anymore. They don't want me to say that, but
Palms up.
well, I'm not gonna say that. But at the end of the day, that's what this is, and it's become medical slavery. Do you hear me, Rhonda? That's what it is now, medical slavery, and that's what we're going through. And it's sad. I just thank God for Arlene, my sister Arlene, and all she continued to do, and as well as you and your staff, because we need to wake up. We need to wake up. And until we stand up and do things, and I know for a fact that about you and Arlene, it ain't about money. Right. It's about getting things done. Yes, and so we're going to have people who might decide to want to come on board for financial reasons. But at the end of the day, the devil is a liar. We're going to resolve this issue first. And anything after that can be what it wants to be. And we need to, once they come from Congress, and I'm getting in touch with the Black Caucus, and me and you are going to make several phone calls. We've got to start holding our own people accountable. If y'all don't want to help us and this is happening to us, why have we made you all millionaires? And I'm going from football players to actors. It's time for them to wake up. It is our theme song is wake up everybody, no more sleeping in bed. It's time for us to wake up.
Yes, it is. Hey, Arlene, and you're so right, Reverend Wright. Arlene, I just wanted to point out, Reverend Wright touched on something. I can imagine that with you carrying this for 25 years and trying to, get people's attention from a genuine standpoint, I would imagine that the more people that you introduce this to, you run the risk of having folks that might, try to undermine your efforts. Is that something that you find yourself dealing with?
Absolutely. And I think that's the part that hurts the most. It's when you trust someone and they jump in your lane and sabotage you behind your back. Yes. But the thing is this is very doable. But I've got the documents, and the documents will bury them. And I think we ought to start publishing these documents. Make them open to the public and let the public make the decision, because it's all there. It's all there. And the thing is Marcel Reed of Whistleblower Summit told me, she goes, it's really according to your zip code, your quality of healthcare. And they use police to stage, and it's a private business. I have records that are scathing. I think maybe we ought to just start selecting a few. And that'll educate people, because when you see it, you read it, that's a human life. And everyone is loved by somebody.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
www.mitv.fyi is the site that you can go to sign up, to join us, to join the fight, to help bring this information to your state, to your region, to your city, to your town. Guys, not until we wake up enough people to what's really going on will we be able to truly put a stop to it. And I like what you say, Arlene. Maybe we do need to go ahead and publish information so that we can get this out in front of the court of public opinion. Because as long as it's protected information, or folks are able to sabotage your efforts, it will muddy the waters. And then obviously we are a people. When I say we, I'm speaking for the Black race. Although dialysis affects all, it seems to be that it's predominantly affecting Black families and Black individuals. And so it's us that need to wake up and come to the table in order to put a stop to it, or at least to call on Medicaid and Medicare to do the right thing by us. Reverend Wright talks about the genocidal understanding. Well, we've got to start calling out these big businesses that use our death and our living as a way to make money. We've got to start coming to the table so we can put a stop to it. Come on, Arlene.
It's not about healthcare, it's strictly profit. And when the patients, I probably wouldn't have gone on this if our patients, we've spent the most for dialysis, government paid. So the thing is we are the third highest mortality rate in the industrialized world. I was asked by Civil Rights to take 100 random patients and find out how many were minorities. 91 were
out of 100 cases, 91 were minority individuals.
Right.
Well, out of the 600,000 in the United States, you'll be surprised who the majority is and what those numbers are.
To me, this is it's the deliberate sabotage, and it's deliberately blocking an advocate, which is under the Code of Federal Regulations law. And they don't have to do it. They don't do it. They do as they please, and they write up patients to get rid of them. Now that is attempted murder. I'm sorry, it is.
Mm,
That should be, some people should go to jail. And I got the
Well,
name.
hopefully we will get some people to go to jail. Hey guys, it's your girl, Palms Up. I want you to know that the Healthy DCME Leadership Coalition has joined the fight. Join the fight to save lives in the dialysis arena, just as we are joining the fight to save lives in our mental wellness understanding. Guys, you know me. One more thing that causes us stress, that causes us to be depressed or anxious in our health understandings, we've got to be able to speak up, guys. We got to be able to have someone that we can turn to and say, enough is enough. I just can't take it anymore. And when the Healthy DCME Leadership Coalition found out that this was going on in the dialysis arena, we certainly joined the ranks to bring this knowledge to our people. Guys, we've got to come back to the table. We've got to stand up and be responsible, because our children are going to come through the lane and they're going to be exposed to these same greedy medical slavery practices, as you heard Reverend Wright reference, as you heard Miss Arlene Mullen speak about. This has been going on since as far back as 1998. And you heard Reverend Wright question the fact that if dialysis has only been around since 75, then what did they do before this? We've got to be able to start asking the questions that require and warrant the answers that we need to put a stop to folks making a profit off of us dying, and just simply because we're breathing. Guys, it's your girl, Palms Up. If you didn't know, there are folks in the dialysis arena that are being taken advantage of. We don't have proper oversight with our Medicare industry. You're looking on the screen to Reverend Ronald Wright, the CEO of the Justice Seekers Texas LLC, a civil rights leader. What would be important enough to bring a civil rights leader to the forefront? There must be something going on. Guys, we got to pay attention. You've got Miss Arlene Mullen. For the last 25 years, she could have done anything not to put herself in harm's way. Yes. Arlene Mullen, a beautiful, caring Caucasian soul with some other, ethnicities involved. But she certainly isn't a Black and brown woman, but she certainly stood up for the Black and brown family and individuals, because she's a human being first. And she recognized that it was not right. Guys, in this life that we live, there are times when we're going to have to stand up and just tell it like it is. Yes. And that is what Arlene Mullen has been doing for the better part of 25 years. But we're joining the fight along with Reverend Wright, along with Arlene. The Healthy DCME Leadership Coalition is asking you, come to the table. Don't be afraid. Tell your stories. If you don't, there are others out there that will take advantage of that. You may find yourself, if you're receiving care, you may find yourself being terminated. This is real stuff. We've lost too many lives. Is dialysis a genocidal understanding? We need some answers. Why would we have decorated doctors over in Southeast DC 5 years in a row? The head of the Fresenius Center in Southeast DC. And now that we're finding out that they're doing questionable things, we need to find out about these decorated doctors that are right here under our nose in our community, making money off of our families dying. We've got to start asking some questions. Arlene and Reverend Ronald Wright, I thank you guys for spearheading this and for bringing it to the nation's capital. Arlene, is there anything else, before we invite Reverend Wright to close us out as well, is there anything else that you'd like for our viewing audience to understand about this?
I would suggest, in all honesty, that people watch their blood pressures, pharmaceuticals, find out the side effects too. I mean, it's not a pleasant thing. And these patients, a lot of times they need family support. And also, I think Reverend Wright and I both agree that we need people that when there is a complaint, they can go and they can do something about it. They have to meet you with you. But they do everything they can to discourage, and we have to stop the false write-ups.
That's right.
Because that is deliberate, intentional murder. They had a case in Texas real fast where one company didn't show up and he died. They had that worker for murder, and that was in Texas. But yet they can do it to our citizens because it's a vicious circle. Everything goes back to them, and who owns the paperwork. I just realized I had to start collecting documents and start keeping tabs on statistics. And I'm getting probably a small portion.
That is amazing that you had enough presence of mind to know that you needed to document or to collect the documents. All too often, many of us are in positions to be able to speak out, to change the trajectory of things. But the first thing we do is think about ourselves and what is that going to mean for us? And will we be in trouble, or will we get hurt? And sometimes a lot of times our fear keeps us from doing that. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for the families that you have been able to help, that you are still working with and advocating for, and just for being brave enough to come forward and know that it's bigger than you. So I can't thank you enough for that. Hey, Reverend Wright, what we need from folks out here, will you help them understand what is your vision coming to the table and what would you like to see happen?
What I really wanted to tell people as well, for all of y'all, we're going to need somebody in every city and state in this country to stand up. And if you don't think you're willing to do it, then we need your support. And when I say we need your support, I mean, regardless of what's going on, get out there and vote, because people died for us to have a right to vote. And once you start voting, there's power in numbers. If we had to start our own PAC to put the people in position that's going to help us, then it's only going to happen when we decide to stand up and make a difference in our own lives. And so we got to get out here and vote and support those who care about us. All these officials that are elected officials and politicians that are in office right now, if they don't care about us, we got to get them out of there. But you can't get them out of there if you don't vote. There's power in numbers. And until we come together as one and start doing things, that's when all our lives are going to be made different. And I'm saying that because we have people like you, and we have a few elected officials that's standing up for our people. Those are the ones that we need in these positions. But sitting back and saying, "Oh, I ain't gonna vote," well, then keep your mouth closed, because it could be you next with dialysis. And what are you gonna do when it happens to you?
Amen.
So I'm saying we just got to come together and support us who are out here fighting for each and every person in this country. But charity starts at home and then it's shared abroad. And if I'm not being treated right, I got to start with me first. And then I'm going to take care of everybody. And as men and women of God, all we're asking is for our people to stand up. And not just our people, these men and women that are sitting behind that altar, God's property, don't stop at that offering table. Get out of here and start doing what God intended for you to do.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. It's your girl. Palms up. I can't say it no better than that. Hey guys, if you're looking to get involved, if you want to be a part of an organization or a movement that is supporting getting the word out, that is supporting getting folks back to the table, the Whistleblowers Association is going to be on Capitol Hill July 28th. Come on down and meet Miss Arlene Mullen, the keeper of the information. I tell you, the keeper of our people. Miss Arlene Mullen stood up over 25 years ago, and she's still standing up. Join us as we join her down at Capitol Hill at the Rayburn Building on July the 28th. There's a whistleblower summit. Guys, get the information at www.mitv.fyi. You can all do something, right? We can all do something but it requires that you are committed, and it requires that you show up. Palms up, and don't keep good information to yourself. Share it. Arlene has been bringing this information forward for the past 25 years. We're going to help her to carry it for 25 plus more years, because we need to make sure that our legacies, our folks that are coming in the lane behind us, don't have to keep fighting these same fights. And as you heard her say, point blank, it's murder. It's murder. Do we have your attention yet? You heard Reverend Wright say, what's going on? What's going on? Is this genocidal? Guys, when we're talking about people intentionally making money off of us dying, that should get your attention. Palms up. Hey, Overseer, would you bring us a word before we get ready to wrap up?
Kelly, you, a big welcome. Thank you so much.
Overseer?
The word is encourage your sister and brother. Let's stop walking in fear and let's walk in power.
All right.
Hey, I like it. I like it. Arlene Mullins and Mr. Reverend Wright, Reverend Ronald Wright, I thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for taking up this cause and for leading the way. We stand with you. We look forward to helping to get representatives in place in every state. And if you're someone out there who needs assistance, who needs help right now, Arlene is an active advocate, and all of the advocates that we will recruit will be trained by Arlene. So you have opportunity right now to meet the mother of the movement, Miss Arlene Mullin, and come down to Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. on July 28th, where the Healthy DCME Leadership Coalition will also be standing with her in unison to make certain that we know that it's time to stand up. It's time to speak out. It's time to heal. Thumbs up out there, and thank you. Please share the feed. Thank you for joining us for another week. We're going to keep this information in front of you. www.mitv.fyi is the website. Join the movement. Hey, Reverend Ronald Wright and Arlene, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Arlene, Arlene, you have safe travels on your next journey. We'll be looking to touch bases with you in the background. And Reverend Wright, I look forward to those phone calls that we need to make so we can stir up the pot.
We're going to start tomorrow.
All right, all right. Palms up to you, sis. Good for seeing you another week. God bless everybody out there. Hey, do us a favor, share the feed and get this word out. Palms up.
All right. Thumbs up.
All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
All right.
Thank you so much.